Okay, so yeah, this call is being recorded and will be posted online. And with that, take it away, Nick.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's see. So we have a couple things on the agenda today. First thing probably talk about is just next meeting. 2 weeks from now is August 27th. Same time on a Thursday. Any concerns about that at all? Okay, we will plan on doing that for now. We're going to be talking about a couple different things. We have page visibility issue, a couple preload issues, a couple other things to triage. But I think first we have Jason Chase here, who is hoping to talk with us a little bit about third-party origin trials. Are you ready to? Do you have anything to present? And are you ready to go first?
Sure, I'll go. I'll just present kind of the design doc that was linked from the minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, so folks can obviously follow along. Oh shoot, never mind. I've done. Okay, that's better. Folks can follow along. So this came on the agenda. I noticed that because I'm on the mailing list. So I said, should I attend? And so I thought it seemed like a good idea. So I'll give some background, but I'll try and keep it brief and mainly leave it open for questions. So I'm Jason Chase, as I said. I work on the Chrome team that supports and develops origin trials for context. And so origin trials is a thing. It's been around a long time. For those who aren't familiar, super briefly, it's a way for Chrome to experiment with features in a way that doesn't lock in and burn in and such. Essentially, web developers sign up, they get a token, they put it on their website, it lets them use a feature. With third-party origin trials, so today the way it works is if I'm a developer and I own foo.com, I sign up for foo.com as an origin, and that token has to match that origin in order to enable a trial. It is possible today for third parties to enable trials on behalf of an origin. So for example, if bar.com was a third party, they could go ahead and register foo.com. And because one of bar.com's scripts is embedded in foo.com, they could present the same token, inject it via meta tag, and that would turn on the trial.
So, sorry, before going into the details of how this thing works, could somebody explain to me what the relevance of this presentation is to this working group?
Sure.
Yeah, so the reason this is this is not a standard discussion, so that's a good point there. But the reason I thought it would be relevant for Jason to get feedback from this group is that we had a lot of feedback from various folks here that are running third parties that the origin trial infrastructure is not something that they can use in order to test out discussed proposals. So I thought it would be relevant for that conversation to happen in the working group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so I'll just pick up. Thanks for that question. So that's, yeah, exactly. We're always interested to get feedback on how we can make origin trials more useful to both web developers who are participating in trials and the folks, it's largely Chrome now, that are running trials to experiment with features. So Microsoft Edge now has their own origin trials program. They've just started that. And so they're using the same infrastructure in Chrome, but they have their own registration process. So just in case folks weren't aware. So going back, I was describing how it worked because to Yoav's point, it's not easy for third parties today that are, you know, on a number of sites to experiment on behalf of those sites, right? And so the goal of this change is to reduce the friction there, so that third-party sites can, third-party providers can experiment across a range of sites, for example, and they can do that basically at just providing a token for their own origin, as opposed to having to manually sign up, 1, 2, 3, 10, whatever origins, and provide and manage all those tokens. So that's the idea at a high level. The other thing too is when you talk about third-party providers, and so we're talking with some internally, they will often need to, in order to gather meaningful data, they might need to experiment across a large number of origins or a larger number of page hits than we allow by default. So right now we have a kind of 0.5% of page loads limit on usage, and so that's to prevent burn-in and prevent people relying on a feature. From some folks internally and whatever you can imagine, well, that's too restrictive. If we need to be able to experiment across hundreds or thousands of sites to get meaningful data, that's a concern about bumping into that limit. So the other aspect of this kind of proposal design is when you explicitly sign up for a third-party origin trial, there's different usage restrictions that would get applied that would allow you to exceed that 0.5% limit. And the one we're kind of actively implementing is, okay, today when you sign up and get a token, it's up to you as the web developer to choose which pages you serve that token on and thus enable the trial. So you can choose, if your volume is low enough, to enable it on 100% of the pages. With third-party origin trials, one of the restrictions would be you can't do it on 100%. You still pick which pages, but Chrome will then also apply a 5% holdback, where it will be consistent. It's based on the Finch infrastructure. It'll be the same users, but those will never be able to participate in the trial, even if you provide the token. So I'll stop talking there, and that, because otherwise I'll just ramble on. And if there's any questions or comments or such. Sorry, one last thing I'll add. Currently today, this is all based on a third-party script will inject a token by inserting a meta tag, and that script has to be served from the third-party provider's origin. We don't currently support an HTTP header, but that's something we could extend in a relatively straightforward fashion in the future.
So as a third-party script provider for Impulse and Boomerang, we actually, we hit this issue quite a bit with new features that are in Origin trial. I remember when we were looking at is input pending and the layout stability API and JavaScript self-profiling API. We only experimented with it on a couple of our own internal sites, just because that's all we had the energy for, was to actively register it on those. And certainly it wasn't, and due to that, it wasn't on large customer sites where we actually would have been able to gather more realistic data, probably. So this is definitely very, very welcome from us. It'll hopefully allow us, with our customers' permission, to experiment a little bit more with some of these cutting edge features on their sites. The only question I have is, one thing that I remember running into is the expiration for these tokens through the Chrome origin trials was often like a 3-month time frame or something like that. Is that still the case where there will be a relatively short term expiry? And the reason why I bring that up is bundling the token itself within the script that we deliver to our customers. We don't often quickly refresh that for our customers. They may want to hold on to the one version that they're using for months or years at a time. And so we would need some other mechanism to deliver fresher origin tokens if we were to experiment with this a bit.
Right. So that point has come up as well. So by default, the expiry is 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, we've heard from other folks that that's a pain point, like having to redeploy tokens. So whether it's like you mentioned, or in some cases, like internally, there's a lot of there's a lot of gates and you have to do a slow rollout and et cetera. So separately, we're also working on a design to address that pain point where we can issue tokens that are good for, let's say, the life of the trial, and instead we'll use a different enforcement mechanism to make sure we get feedback. So, I mean, net, the reason for the 6-week expiration was to make sure developers are engaged and reacting to changes to the trial, and also as a carrot stick to get feedback.
Feedback, yeah, for sure.
And so we're looking at, okay, well, can we separate the expiration from enforcing feedback?
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise this sounds really good from a third-party provider's point of view, for sure.
Plus one on what Nick said in terms of extending the trial period or whatever mechanism we can have.
There we go. Okay, so my microphone is working. I can chime in similar to Nick's note on Shopify side. This has been, I think I shared a while ago that this was a problem for us as well, trying to implement origin trials on a number of our stores with relatively low effort has been a friction that's prevented us from really using origin trials. I'm just hearing, I went for 6 months of parental leave and I feel like I'm still catching up on everything. So this is just coming on my radar, and I'm going to read through the proposal that you have here, and really interested. No questions at this time though.
Also, just kind of a side question. I don't know if Ben was on the call for a moment. I don't actually see. No, he's still there. Oh yeah, Ben is still there. Does Firefox or do any of the other browsers have? I know that Chrome and potentially Edge are using similar mechanisms. Are there any other browsers that are doing something similar-ish to be able to experiment with fresher features?
Not that I'm aware of. Chromium-based browsers could choose to enable support for Chrome origin trial tokens, but right now it's essentially an opt-in, right? Everyone who uses Chromium has to configure some code to say, yeah. So they could choose to honor tokens issued by Chrome, but I'm not aware of anyone that does. And I know if you go back in the history of this idea, like there were folks from Firefox and Mozilla who had been, contributed and such way back when, but I'm not aware that they have anything quite like this.
Confirm.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, we don't do anything like that.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions for Jason while we have him?
Okay. If you do, you're welcome to either, I see some folks already have, or you're welcome to comment on the doc. You can reach me, chasej@chromium.org, and happy to talk with folks individually about what would or wouldn't work for them, whether it's this in particular or origin trials in general.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason, for joining us today. Certainly welcome to stick around, or we wouldn't be upset if you wanted to get your time back too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So next thing, we're going to hop into some issue triage, I think, for a couple different things. The first one is page visibility issue 59. Just paste that into the chat. It's a continuation of what we were chatting about, I think, 2 weeks ago, where we wanted to get some clarification on the hidden case and whether the app switcher might affect the visibility state if the app switcher is active. Ryosuke pointed out for Safari, for example, that if you have a video playing and you open up the app switcher, the video can keep on playing within the switcher itself. And it sounds like there is possibly a proposal or thoughts around maybe having either a third state or another binary state of whether the page is interactive or not, or something like that. Yosuke, did you want to make a case for either of those?
Sure. First of all, after Ryosuke's comment, I tested, and it turns out that Chrome on Android also continues to play videos when in this tab switcher mode. At the same time, Nicholas raised some concerns that, talking about this internally, Nicholas raised concerns that if we move away from hidden as the stage in which pages are supposed to beacon up their performance metrics, that can result in breakage because people are trying to see if their visibility state is explicitly hidden, and if that won't be the case, they will do nothing and then will lose their tab. And that raised questions as to whether we even need this third, like what exactly we're expecting developers to do in this third state of like the third preview state that's different from hidden. And if there is nothing there, then maybe we can just acknowledge the fact that hidden is a misnomer. And there are cases where the tab, and basically redefine it as semantically meaning non-interactive, but maybe even alias it, but keep it like but at the same time, maybe hidden is a misnomer and it should be non-interactive, the visibility state that we actually want. And I'm curious to hear what folks think about that.
Well, so I think you have to think about what the use case of this visibility state in the first place, right? So to me, there are 2 or 3 things that the websites use it for. First is when a page goes to visibility hidden state, I guess this is the primary thing you're thinking of, which is that you save some states back to the server, or record the fact that the page became invisible. So maybe for some like what's called other provider that's in display as, maybe they want to record that fact, right? So that's the one case. But there are websites that wants to, let's say, stop the video or like stop some sort of animations in a page when it goes to hidden state. They basically want to do some sort of garbage collection, if you will. So that's the second case. So the primary reason I was raising this concern is because if they want to do that kind of stuff where they stop animations and so forth, they don't want, like, we don't want that to happen when just because user went to the app switcher, right? Because in that state, page is still active, user can still see it, and everything in the page needs to continue to function at that moment. Like it's not a state in which the user cannot see it, user can fully see it. And I mean, in there are cases in which the user accidentally getting into app switcher state and they want to just go back, right? So it'll be very disruptive if the page suddenly stopped all the things it's doing and then resumed as the user went back to the Safari.
Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of like, I guess another thing is that so let's say on the Mac or Windows, if there's a window, that's open, right, and the user goes to some page, and if the window was temporarily out of focus because user focused on another app, like we don't say then the window's invisible, right? Like we don't say the visibility state is hidden at that state because Windows is still visible.
I'm not, so I don't remember the exact definition, but
I mean, if Windows just lost the focus, we don't say it's hidden.
yeah. I think there are some
So-
questions there, but that's not the thing is the reason why I think it's important for us to do recognize that different state is that the tab switcher, the tab can die at any moment, and therefore we want the user to save state at that point, including like a local state for if the user did work, as well as analytic state and beacon it back to the server for like also maybe save work or analytics or anything else that the app needs to do before it is potentially killed. So, but
I get that, but I mean,
that,
that to me is not really visibility, right? That seems like a different thing.
Maybe, but this is what we've been telling developers for the last, I don't know how many years, because there is the unload event, but it's unreliable. There is before unload, it's also unreliable. So we told developers, whenever the page is hidden, that's the point in time where you should save state. And if we were to change that, we have to take that into account and see how we avoid breaking sites that already do that. At the same time, you are right that sites should also know that you know, they're in this preview mode or non-interactive mode where the user still sees what is happening on the site, so they could continue to run animations and videos and whatnot. And
So,
yeah, sorry.
So Ryosuke's point was that this is kind of like app switchers and more desktop-like features on mobile, like throw a wrench in the mix here. Whereas up until now, we've assumed that mobile browsers are sort of full screen, and when you go not visible, that implies you're about to be able to close or whatnot. What happens on like split screen mobile platforms where you have two apps open simultaneously, where it's not? Does anyone have experience there where like the tab isn't in focus, but on the other side, you might be in the applications app where you could close it from a task manager type thing? Like, are we already hitting limits of this sort of guidance?
I mean, I think this goes back to we have visibility and we have browser context. And right now we keep hitting the visibility thing, but I feel like there's unresolved questions about browsing context still.
I don't know that this is the case. What are the unresolved questions? Because
I mean, do we need a third visibility state if we have a browsing context that is specifically for app switchers and stuff?
I don't think that we have, like the app, like the tab switcher state is not its own browsing context. It's not.
What is it?
It's an application UI. So it holds all the browsing content in the same way that the tab bar holds all the browsing contexts, but it's not.
Wouldn't that be a parent context then in HTML spec?
I don't think so, because this is part of the application UI. It's not a web exposed.
So the analogy on a Mac, for example, is that it's like if you on a Mac and if you have a full screen app and you went to expose, right, where you see multiple, like all the apps in your computer. That's sort of the state we're talking about. So that, like, I mean, I'm even not sure if we get the notification when we go to App Switcher, frankly. So basically, it's like a bit OS level feature where user would like to see the list of apps that's currently running or like that had run previously, and then may want to move to a different app.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I said it's no different than what existed even before the mobile became popular. For example, on Windows, you already have the app switcher when you press Alt Tab, the Windows tab, and that keeps all the animations on those applications running, right? And I don't think we ever consider that as a hidden state or anything like that, at least for what I remember.
So the difference between desktop and mobile here is that on mobile, browsers are significantly more trigger happy in killing off tabs and evicting that memory. Which means that moving to the hidden state, I think that on desktop, like the unload events are potentially reliable. I don't know, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that the whole like before unload and unload being unreliable is a mobile thing more than a desktop thing.
Yeah, the main point that the issue is bringing up is that there needs to be some callback that is reliable across platforms that developers can use to save state in or to beacon analytics or something where they're not waiting for these other unreliable callbacks like unload and before unload, which do not get called on many mobile platforms. And then hidden, I agree with the discussion that hidden conceptually doesn't always fit that model. And I think it would be fine to pick a different model, but we do have hidden already. And if we could standardize around that, I think that would be preferred. To play devil's advocate for a little bit, we've been promoting the use of hidden as the last reliable callback for a long time. And I don't think developers have largely adopted that. I don't know how well that message has gotten out. We still see unload all over the place. As Chrome has implemented BF cache, that's been more apparent than ever that we see unload and before unload all over the place. So if we were to choose a different API, I think it might not be the worst thing, but I do think it is very important that we have some callback that is reliable across desktop and mobile and all browsers, where that's the last point where you might not ever get another callback.
So what you're suggesting is that maybe we need a save state now callback that will be clear on these semantics and then leave hidden and visible to be like the point in time where the tab is actually hidden. So the preview mode will not be hidden until the user actually switches tabs.
Well, I think that question depends on whether or not the people working on these different browsers think. I mean, like Ryosuke's point, I think is valid, but then the question would be, could mobile Safari reliably fire the hidden callback on every single user session? And if the answer is no, then we need to pick a different callback. Or we need to call it hidden when you switch into this preview mode or whatever temporary state that we call this thing.
Yeah, I think Ryosuke, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand correctly, the question is whether WebKit is aware of this change or not, and whether although like it's not an it's not an OS thing, it's a browser thing, right?
That's what I keep arguing. Yeah.
But sure, but it's a browser thing, but it's not Benjamin, the bit that I don't understand about the browsing context argument is that this tab switcher is not a web page, or at least it's not a web exposed web page. So like maybe it's implemented as one in some browsers. I don't know. But conceptually, doesn't have to be a web page. So the concept of browsing context there doesn't really apply. It doesn't treat all the different tabs as child browsing contexts, for example.
Right. But I guess I'm making an argument here that if browser tabs or the tray was a parent context, then we'd actually have semantics for talking about what is active and what isn't active. And without that, we're getting into this thing about like, is it hidden or visible? But we don't have any way to talk about active and hidden, active and visible.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're not gonna turn like those tabs that are, each one of them has its own top level browsing context will not be like, there's no concept of them being adopted to another browsing context when this tab switcher thing is happening. And that seems like a rather complex machinery that will have a lot of implications. Like, what's the origin of that document that is the browser, for example? Like, there are a lot of complexities that will go along with that that I don't think we want to go into.
So we're going to then make visibility more complex. I mean, I think like we're going to run into complexity wherever. I'm not really wedded to this, but I'm just saying like this isn't super consistent or coherent with respect to HTML from what I can see. I would love it if there was a way for that to happen.
I guess I'm not sure what's the inconsistency that you're seeing with visibility, other than the fact that, yes, it's inconsistent in the sense that it's currently implemented in different points in time in different browsers. But I don't see what would prevent us from, achieving consistency without changing the, without transforming all the top level browsing contexts into child browsing contexts of something.
So, Yoav, I'm not sure if I agree with the answer to your previous question in the first place. I just want to make sure we're on the same page, which is you said this is a browser level concept as opposed to an OS level concept. So I don't know what Safari on iOS, how that works, but at least, Chrome on Android, you have the tab switcher, which is within the browser, where surely you have some UI where the page continues to live, it might not be interactable. But we own that. We're not at risk of the OS killing a random tab because the app is still in focus. It's the OS level features. It's this thing that, someone brought up on Windows. You can Alt Tab and you still have a live preview of the page, and someone can hit X to close that application from within there. It's just not as common. So I guess that pattern hasn't been as adopted. On mobile, the top level like expose type overview is very common, and that's the concern. And so we're saying as soon as the app at the OS level enters the switcher, that's when you need to save, because we can't predict, and it's very common.
Yeah, that's a good point. So basically we have two switchers here.
Yes, because the tab switcher in the browser, even after hitting X, the browser could still extend the lifetime of that tab long enough to call hidden and whatnot. It's not going to go away suddenly. So it's the OS level problem that's in more dire need of solving, I would say. Is that true?
That's a good point. I don't know if browsers today actually extend the lifetime of the document in order for it to save state, but yeah, I can imagine that being possible, assuming syncXHR is not a thing in those dismissal events, which may be the case at some point. Okay, yeah, so the question is whether we're, so assuming that the OS level issue is a serious issue, we need OS level signals to the browser that the OS is now in the app switching mode. And Ryosuke, is that something you can figure out whether it's feasible or not from your perspective?
I think fundamentally, I'm not even sure if this thing that visibility state being unreliable is even like fundamentally just a bug or not. Uh, so it's hard for me to answer that question without digging more into why that's happening. Yeah, it's hard to say.
To give a specific example, on iOS, you can swipe up, like gesture up, and go into the app switcher. And if Safari or Chrome or whatever browser you're using was in focus, now it'll go into this kind of preview mode. At that point, you can swipe up to close the app. So my guess is when you swipe up to close the app, Safari is not going to then run a bunch of handlers. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe maybe it still is in the background doing some things, and it can run those handlers at that point. But that would be when the visibility hidden would have to change if we add this third kind of visibility mode of like, preview or whatever. So like that's specific. Do you think in that point it's reliable enough to call hidden? And if not, then I think that's when we need to start thinking about a better signal.
Well, I'm pretty sure the apps do get some callback when they get dismissed because they're supposed to save some states in that state. I mean, I'm not sure if it's a matter of policy that we don't fire visibility, like we don't run any visibility, or we try to run it but we run out of time. I'm not really sure about that. So I think if anything, like this might be something that we need to dig into and figure out, because if it's a matter of policy that like we don't want to do anything, I'm not sure like adding a new thing in a spec would help that situation.
So the adding a new thing would potentially help you fire that event, like the save state event, earlier. So if it's just an issue, if it's just a bug, and you can fire an event when the browser is being dismissed, and I think we should figure out the same, like potentially we want to align behaviors here and Android to do the same, and we need to figure out whether it's the same thing on Android. But if that is, like, if we can run an event at that point in time, even if we have add restrictions to it, for example, not having sync XHR in the event or something along those lines that will make sure that the handler is brief, then this would be a potentially good solution for that. Otherwise, we want to be able to fire that save state event, whatever we choose to call it, whether we keep it as visibility hidden or something else. We want it to fire earlier. So when the user moves to the potentially risky state of the browser being dismissed.
I mean, is this an issue on Android?
So in my testing, I think your suggestion, Risky, sounds like a good next step. Let's figure out whether or not Safari could fire this event. And if they could, then that's probably the right solution. On Android, in my testing, if you scroll up to the top of the bug, I saw that Chrome did not fire this event and when you would close the browser from the app switcher. However, Firefox Mobile did, which makes me think that it would technically be possible for Chrome to do it. And if Chrome and Firefox and Safari could all do it, then that would solve the problem as long as they align to that behavior.
Yes, and then so there are actually a couple of questions here. One is can the browser fire that dismissal event at that point in time? And then if that dismissal event queues up requests, so for example, SendBeacon, will those requests actually be able to go up, or will the browser die before that? And assuming the answer to both of these is yes, we can feasibly fire an event, and requests that this event will trigger can get to the server in a reason, like they have a reasonable window of time to get to the server. Then this is the ideal solution here from a compatibility perspective?
I believe my test would track whether it was possible by writing to local storage. We could extend the test to firing send beacon and making sure that a beacon was received at some other endpoint.
Yeah, local storage is sync, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it would be better to try out something async and see if it actually makes it through.
Yoav, can I interject something here?
Sure.
I think it's probably a great idea to allow the web page to save its state somehow, but I definitely see this, like, if we give such an event, whether we abuse the visibility or create a new event or whatever, people are going to do things in that event, and then they're going to do more things and more things and more things. And at some point, we're going to have to draw a line and say, nope, you had your chance. We don't care whether it's running synchronous JavaScript. We don't care whether it's storing things, sending requests. Your process is now terminated. And that is going to be a hard line to find.
Yeah.
I think it's a valid concern. The flip side of that is that currently developers know that, or some developers know that these events are unreliable. So they do everything very proactively. So for example, let's say they have 10 beacons they want to send. They could queue them all up and send them as one HTTP request in the visibility change event. But because they're not sure if it's going to happen, they send them as 10 separate individual events earlier in the page. And so you could make the argument that if the visibility event were reliable, there would be less work being done in those cases. I mean, that's just a hypothesis, but I would seem to be reasonable that would be the case.
Also, maybe there is a way for us to somehow draw that line ahead of time and make sure that draw a line on the bounds of reliability here. And yes, if you're running an event that's triggering a long task, like if your event handler is triggering a long task that goes beyond X millisecond, it will get terminated. So if you want to save your state, you have to do that rather quickly and using asynchronous APIs and whatnot. Does that make sense, or is that naive?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do think that we need something more reliable. But I think we need to also acknowledge that we are not going to get something that's perfectly reliable.
Yeah. So mobile app platforms
I
already.
would go with predictably reliable over perfect. But yeah, sorry, Michael.
I was just going to say mobile app platforms have guidelines for how much time and what the conditions are. And so at least we could borrow some inspiration there and how well it's working for developers. I just wanted to say that it looks like the two proposals are to explore. Maybe we could just fix the bug and call hidden reliably so that we don't have to introduce a third state, or introduce a new better signal for when we think would be a good time. Like we have to predict this might be the last moment before termination. And so I would just say that it's going to get harder and harder to predict. Even if we introduce a new name because hidden's the wrong name, I think this is going to continue to be an issue. Because as we said on desktop, it's probably already a wrong signal because of the way, like alt tab and the way people terminate is unpredictable. But then even on like tablet platforms or as mobile platforms become more capable, right now I have on my Android like split screen where I have Chrome in foreground visible, but the second bottom app is the application's view where I could force close Chrome at any time. Like it will be more and more difficult to predict. So if what we're saying is let's just make hidden reliable, so once we know it is going to be terminated, let's give it some time to actually execute. Should it really be the hidden event that is the one that's the guidance, or should now before unload become again the more reliable signal? Is what I wanted to ask.
That's a good question. The problem with the unload and before unload is that people do many things. Like exactly the line that Alex was talking about is long crossed for unload and before unload. Maybe we can revert some of that for synchronous XHR, which is the largest culprit. But last time we tried that, there was a lot of pushback, and I think we ended up not going ahead with it, or at least postpone our plans. So in an ideal world, I would say probably yes, but I don't know if backward compat will enable that.
I also don't think it's
before
the right
unload and
name either. But because it's not really before unload necessarily, because you can just be hiding out but not unloading. So it's also a misleading name as well. So I don't think we should break before unload just because, yeah.
No,
Right.
this would be if we fix the bug where we actually know the OS level switcher like swiped the app away, it actually got closed, and then had some time to still fire like handlers.
I think the problem with that
but
is
you're
that there
talking-
could be 100 tabs that have a pending before unload handler, and then you're calling 100. Whereas with visibility change, at least you know it's just one tab at a time.
True. Also, unload and before unload have weird implications on DF caches in some browsers, and we don't want to encourage people to to.
Gotcha. So to Philip, to your point, we want folks to bundle up and actually save as each tab becomes hidden. And then the last one has this special case, perhaps where it was swiped away, as opposed to everyone waiting for the last moment and then throwing that. Okay, that's a good thing.
Michael,
Well,
are you
and when was the last time you closed it? Like you probably have some open tabs in your app on your phone that were open like 50 days ago or something. You don't want to wait that long to send that beacon.
Benjamin?
Isn't this actually an on-exit handler, not an on-unload handler, is what you're talking about, Michael?
Yes, presumably. And so that might not be the only signal you listen to. It would be a set of...
I like it. I think that would clarify some of this confusion, frankly. Anyway.
In the page lifecycle API discussion, we talked about like a backgrounded state that had similar semantics.
I think that's conceptually stronger.
Yeah. Potential. I think it would be still good to figure out if we can set, like, basically fix the current bugs if indeed there are bugs and not policy changes, and then because I think that would be the best thing for backward compatibility, rather than introducing yet another dismissal event, because we have a bunch of them, and it would be good to stop adding more. But yeah, if that's not the case, then we could look into potentially triggering those like a hidden state event, or some like you may get shut down soon event earlier. Cool.
I just wanted to say, if we were talking about SyncXHR in some of these events, that I believe that Chrome is currently disallowing SyncXHR on page dismissal. So on before unload, visibility change, unless you sign into an origin trial to get that back. And even that is scheduled to go away as of Chrome 88.
Okay, that's good, because I remember that. I remember the attempt, but I know that it got a lot of pushback, so I'm happy to be corrected in the fact that it's potentially going away. So
Yeah, I think the pushback was being addressed by the deprecation trial, so we're giving developers the opportunity to hold off for their origins for a few months and be able to fix things. So,
okay, cool.
Ian, can you just clarify that's Android, right?
let me just check that. The intent to experiment does not say that it is just Android. Let me see if I can find out. I can't tell from here, actually.
Okay.
That may be desktop as well as Android. I don't know.
Let me try to see if I can. Okay. No, it's not just Android. All platforms. At least the initial intent was for all platforms. Yeah, so I don't see why they would have changed that halfway through. Yeah, so hopefully that would, like, assuming this passes quietly, it will allow other browsers to follow if you wish to discourage SyncXHR, which I believe you do.
I think we already disallow SyncXHR and before unload and unload. I don't know if we disallow in a visibility change events. But I will point out though, in the case of app switcher or any other way the browser getting terminated, whether XHR is sync or not sync is not that relevant because their main limitation is how much time we spend sending a network request at all. So I mean, in that scenario, what matters is the network, not so much like whether JavaScript continues to run or not.
Yeah, basically, even if it's a beacon that takes too long to be sent out, it will get terminated equally, is what you're saying. Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe the action item here is for folks to figure out on their relative mobile OSs, whether this is something that would be feasible to do, and if it would be, what would be the timeframes for those events to do their thing before being terminated. Does that make sense as an action item for both?
What do you mean by time frame?
I mean, whether you could say I'm running I'm willing to run that visibility event, but if it's running beyond the 10 milliseconds, it will get terminated. And then we can figure out whether those 10 milliseconds are enough for the app to wrap up its state and send it up or not. Does that make sense?
I mean, that kind of timeout seems to depend on operating systems policy too, right? I don't know if that's something we could ever commit to.
Sure, but you could figure, like, it would be good to figure out the current state of affairs and then, try to see if this is something that is system. If right now apps have 5 seconds so if the browser has 5 seconds to save states, we can conclude something from that towards the foreseeable future, assuming that conditions won't degrade significantly. And then, yes, policies would be able to change, but we would be able to fix today's bugs and, worry about them if they regress tomorrow. Versus if browsers right now have 0 heads up as to them being dismissed, and then we have to figure out a different way to resolve this problem.
Okay, sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I don't know if we have time for anything else, because we kind of exhausted this session. Yeah, so maybe we'll keep the preload issues for next time.
Seems reasonable.
Can you open the minutes for visibility? I can't access them.
Oh,
Yes, I will do that right now.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, with that, thanks all. And oh, one more thing. I sent out a bunch of calls for consensus for various incubations to the list earlier today. Basically, please take a look at them. Please make sure that your AC rep takes a look at them in case you think they may have objections, and let us know, because I think it would be great to adopt them. Those are all relatively mature incubations that I think would be good working drafts. So yeah, let us know if you have any objections, or if your AC rep does. Cool. And with that, see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks,
See ya.
everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.